This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman. And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 373 of the DCAU Review. I am Liam, and with me, as he always is Cal. Cal, it's been a little over a year since all 10 episodes of the first season of Batman Caped Crusader, easy for me to say, hit the airwaves, or the streaming waves of Jeffrey Bezos' Amazon Prime. And here we are finally coming back for not just one review, but an entire month of Batman Caped Crusader reviews. And as we'll hear in a little bit, as our listeners will hear in a little bit, we're not alone this week either.
That's right. We have a very special guest coming up who we will intro in just a little bit, that will be on to kind of give us a scorecard alongside of us. And spoiler alert, you probably know who it is if you've read the description here. If it's autoplay, we'll let it be a surprise once we get to it. But excited to talk about The Stress of Her Regard, which, Liam, technically it is officially the spooky season. We are into the month of ghouls and goblins and ghosts, and it is a spooky episode, albeit maybe not on the surface here, as we introduce Harley Quinn to this, at least this universe's version of Harley Quinn to the series. And boy howdy, we have it's a different take. I'll just say that while some of the DNA is there, it is a very different makeup here for our clown here, as we'll get into when we discuss things here. But of course, before we do that, we'll get the official IMDb synopsis before we try to give our own synopsis for this week's episode, which originally, as we mentioned, aired back on August the 1st, 2024 is when it became available on Amazon Prime, as it still is today. So a little over a year here at the time of original recording. And Liam, the official IMDb synopsis for this week's episode is brought to you by buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. The best way to support the podcast is buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. If you head over today, you become a one-time supporter of the podcast and send a little thank you over, or perhaps a little note of encouragement with your one-time gift, or you can become a monthly supporter of the podcast at one of our 3 different levels of support. All of them come with some great perks. The top one, though, if you join our Super Friend tier, which is our top tier, you become a supporter of the podcast. At that level, you get the opportunity, if you so wish, to ask a question about the episode that we're reviewing that week, and hear your question answered here directly on the air by the both of us. So become a supporter of the podcast by heading over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review, please. And regardless of whether it's a one-time or monthly support, please support the podcast today.
That's right. So this is the synopsis for The Stress of Her Regard, which is written by Hallie Gross, directed by Matt Peters, with music by Frederick Weidman, and animation by Studio Greta. And that synopsis reads as such. Batman and Barbara Gordon are set on a collision course when they each investigate the abductions of rich, powerful men in Gotham. Okay, pretty good. We're keeping the mystery of what exactly is going on here. Honestly, better than the show does, because they pretty much tell you right away. But we will get into our more expansive plot recap, because we have a guest this week. Cal, we probably won't go into as much detail as we normally would. But yes, it's suffice to say, as we're kicking things off, we see Batman is interrogating some ne'er-do-well that he's just recently captured. And before he can really read this guy the riot act, they see a man. Imagine this: Batman going up against a guy dressed as a pharaoh. That's ridiculous. But here it is, as a man who, for legal reasons, is not referred to as King Tut, I don't think. But yes, he's very much dressed, as we'll talk about when we talk about visuals later, dressed as the classic Adam West Batman character, King Tut. And he's just kind of on his own little rampage. So Batman takes hold of him and subdues him. But it's clear there's something's going on as he and Alfred are investigating. They realize that this is one of many rich gentlemen in the city of Gotham, especially one not known for his charity, despite the point, as Alfred points out as he holds up a newspaper, that he had apparently just recently donated all of his money, and thus this has resulted in him not having any money for better psychiatric care. So he has been made a ward of the state, and he has been sent off to Arkham Asylum as Batman and Alfred begin to sort of piece together that maybe there's a little something more going on here as to what exactly could have happened to this guy and why he had this sudden generous streak right before losing his mind. And we find out very quickly that the reason is that there is a new sort of though no, not quite using the same motives as or means as Batman. There's a kind of a new vigilante-esque character on the scene, and this poor King Tut guy is not her only target, as we see when we get a glimpse into her facility.
Yeah, that's right. We see that this new Harley Quinn here, who is certainly more menacing and certainly scarier than I would say a traditional Harley Quinn. I don't know. Maybe people are scared of Harley Quinn as she is in Batman, but she's certainly not smiling and not laughing in this iteration of this character. She's got a whole room full of men that are locked up. She is actually torturing one of them, tickling his feet, forcing him to cry and be willing to give over all of his possessions to her. He initially relents, but she doesn't believe him. She doesn't take him at his word and forces the torture to continue. So we see that. And we also see, again, a room full of other captives that appear to be potentially her other victims here. But so we also cut back, so we see Barbara Gordon about out and about, and she's interacting with Harley, and we see her also, the two of them having lunch together, and then they're interrupted by Renee Montoya, who shows up to talk to Barbara, and we see that Harley once again very forward and very interested in Renee doing her best to kind of remain straight faced and talk only business, but Harley is having none of that. She insists that the two of them go out on a date. Meanwhile, as we learn, Barbara is sort of also stressed out and has a conference with Jim Gordon, who has gone through, if you recall, it's been quite some time, Liam, as we mentioned, over a year since we covered this show, but Jim Gordon had all of his power essentially as commissioner stripped from him, especially with regards to the Batman pursuit, because the mayor sees him sort of as not doing enough, and he's placed Bullock and Trask as kind of the head point guys, despite them not having the title of commissioner. They're now in charge of this task force and kind of given this power, and Gordon is told to stand down, despite the fact that he sees them as corrupt cops on his force. They're given more power, and he's not allowed to really touch them at this point. So Barbara has some heart-to-heart talks with him as to, how he's dealing with it, and he's very clearly trying not to let on that it is stressing him out. He's trying to take the waves as they come, but all of this is still clearly adding some stress to his life as well, and thus making Barbara stressed out as well. So this is all discussed, by the way, with Renee and Barbara at the table as Harley is there, and Harley decides that she's going to sort of forcibly ask Renee out on a date. She just basically tells them they're going on a date, whether Renee likes it or not. And Renee, despite being initially resistant to it, kind of, I think, appreciates the forwardness that Harleen rather, shows in this setting here. We also see more of Harley Quinn's interactions with the men that she has cooped up here. We learn a little bit more about how she sees them and the things that she kind of has done to them as a result of their as a result of their sharing of their problems with her while also clearly not being willing to improve upon them. Batman, meanwhile, is doing his own investigation on the disappearances. He goes and investigates this guy that was dressed up like a pharaoh, or believes that he's a pharaoh, and we see him find a entire secret room filled with Egyptian jewels and other things. And meanwhile, is confronted by Bullock Trask and a SWAT level army of other police officers. Batman is able to escape the police officers during that time, but he does manage to get some evidence before he's caught there, showing that this same man that was found roaming the streets of Gotham in full Egyptian garb was indeed a patient of Harleen Quinzel. And if you remember, Bruce was also at one point a patient of Dr. Quinzel, so he's all too familiar with her. So we see Batman begin his own investigation of her. So meanwhile, Barbara goes to Arkham, where she tries to interview Fletcher Deming. She mentions that she's going to be his public defender. And in the conversation with Deming, she brings up that she wants him to have a psychiatric evaluation by Dr. Quinzel. And this triggers something in Deming to recognize the name, that he says that the name sounds familiar, makes him feel warm and fuzzy. But in the midst of this, he decides to make a break for it and try and run out of the asylum. He's able to make it to the roof, where he almost jumps off as he screams that he wants to be with her. But Barbara is able to catch up with him in heroic fashion and prevent him from taking the leap just in time for the doctors to subdue him. Before he can get out, though, the name of the person that he was trying to escape to reach, he can only get out the ha syllables before he passes out. So this leads Barbara to ask Dr. Quinzel herself if she had any dealings with Mr. Deming. Harleen denies it, saying that she may have heard the name of him but isn't familiar with him. So when later on Barbara goes to Dr. Quinzel's office, she notices that the door is ajar, and she lets herself in, only to see that the office has been trashed and ransacked. She notices that the window is open and goes and sees a cape disappearing over the horizon. And as she walks back in, she looks through the documents that were left on the desk and notices the appointment book that Dr. Quinzel keeps. And she looks at some of the names and notices that Mr. Deming was actually listed in there. So now she knows that Harleen has lied to her for some reason and is not keeping the truth. And that Batman has some evidence in this as well. So she's going to do her own investigation of Harleen, and where she discovers actually an address that is written in the book. It's actually impressed on the page, so she does her own detective work, takes the old side of the pencil to get the impression to show up, and comes up with an address for a mansion that she's going to drive out and inspect. Batman, of course, has the same information, and meanwhile, Dr. Quinzel and Montoya are out on their date, all while this is culminating as we see things coming to a head here in the end of our episode.
That's right. So as Barbara arrives at this Mr. Hastings, another wealthy man that apparently is some sort of a real estate magnate, a grown man who we've already seen is somehow in the employ of Harley. We reveal that that's actually Mr. Hastings himself, but he's answering his own door and is acting very sort of servantly. And he, of course, turns Barbara away. He refuses to speak to her about anything related to Harleen. So as Barbara drives away a little bit up the road to hide her car, she knows that she needs to investigate further. So as that's going on, as you mentioned, Harleen and Renee are at their date, and they're really hitting it off. It seems there's light and fluffy banter here, and just to things seem to be going in the right direction for Renee's love life. Harleen gets a phone call, and she tells Renee that there's an emergency with one of her patients, and that she has to leave, but tells her that she'll find her later at this club, and gives her a kiss goodbye, telling her that this night has just started, or at least that's what they're both hoping. And so we see Batman and Barbara both arrive at Hastings Mansion at that point, or return to Hastings Mansion. As Barbara's trying to find a way in, Batman arrives, tells her to leave it alone and to stay out of the way, let the police handle it, which is of course very ironic because he's not about to do that, as he grapples up the side of the building, as Barbara remarks how unfair it is that he has that advantage. So as we see Batman make his way into the facility just as Harley and Hastings return, she unleashes all of her hypnotized former billionaires or millionaires onto him, and they eventually are able to overwhelm him enough and shove him into one of the cells. And that like this is a very Bond villain thing here. Then she turns on the knockout gas, and she mentions that while she doesn't actually want to kill Batman, but she had done a lot of studying of him based on when she was profiling him for the police in some of the earlier episodes, that she'll give him a 5-minute chance to get out of the building before everything explodes. As Hastings and Harleen begin to leave the premises, as Hastings asks her if she's going to miss Gotham now that they're on their way out of town. But as they're driving by, they notice Barbara's car parked off to the side of the road, or Harleen does. So she runs back to the building as Barbara is attempting to free Batman from his cell. She picks up a bat. This girl picks up a bat and begins to swing it at the glass door of the cell as Batman is laying unconscious. She begins to break it, but can't quite do the job, as Harleen returns, implores Barbara to leave the building, but Barbara simply won't do it. So Harleen acquiesces. She presses the button to open the cell, but of course it's been damaged by Barbara swinging a bat at it. So the door does not open. And as the bombs begin to go off, we actually see the building begin to crumble, and the section of the building that includes Batman's cells falls out and falls below, apparently into the sea. And that's the end of Batman. He's dead. Just kidding, of course. As of course that, I mean, yeah, it would be a bold move to kill off the main character 5 episodes into a 10-episode season, but unfortunately they did not go that direction, or fortunately perhaps. But yes, as Barbara and Harleen are then caught up in the explosion themselves, they both end up hanging precariously off the side of the cliff, as Barbara holds on to the side of the cliff and holds on to Harleen. Harleen tells her to let her go, but of course Barbara refuses, because even after all this, she still sees Harleen as a friend, and obviously doesn't want her to die. So as she's trying to pull them both up to safety, the edge of the cliff gives way, and they both begin to fall down towards the water, when Batman reappears, swinging and catching Barbara, but he can't catch Harleen as well, as she apparently falls to her own demise, leaving and as Batman sits Barbara back on the side of the cliff. Barbara just kind of breaks down. She has this really emotional reaction, having to deal with both finding out that her good friend has betrayed her, but also that apparently that friend is now dead, and the mixed emotions there. And this is, as we'll talk about in a moment here, this is a big moment for Batman as well, as rather than just disappearing into the night this time, he stays behind, and he says that he's sorry. He apologizes that he can't do more, and he's sorry that Barbara is going through this emotional crisis in the moment. So he hears the police sirens in the distance, so he does disappear, as Barbara sort of contemplates what all of this could mean for her and her life going forward. But unfortunately, Barbara and Batman are not the only one whose lives have been changed by this event. As we cut back to Renee standing outside that club, she sees different people passing by, but no Harleen, of course. Finally, she hears a phone in a nearby phone booth ringing. She walks up and she does hear Harleen's voice, so no ambiguity here. She's still alive. But she tells Renee that while she's sorry she can't make it, she had a really nice time, and that when she comes back into town, she'll try to look her up again. And we sort of fade to black as we just get this picture of Renee being very sad and isolated as we fade to black this week. So, with that out of the way, now that the recap is over, Cal, we are going to throw to ourselves in the past with our very special guest correspondent to discuss the rest of our categories in this week's episode. Take it away, us.
All right. Thank you, us from the past or future, or however you want to put it. But yes, we are finally joined here now that we've completed our synopsis of the plot. We are joined by our special guest correspondent for this week, returning to the podcast once again, best friend of the show, colorist, formerly of the Batman The Adventures Continue series, and a couple ongoing series right now that she's working on. Award nominated colorist Monica Kubina. Welcome back to the podcast, Monica.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. It has been far too long. We know you've been busy, we've been busy, and but glad we were finally able to line things up here, and especially for something that we're kind of super excited to talk about. We were excited a year ago when this, or a year plus now, when this show originally debuted on Amazon Prime, and I will be honest, the hype has kind of died out. I don't see much chatter about this. We don't even know. I mean, we know season 2 might be coming out sooner than later. It's still being worked on, but don't hear much about this. But there's still stuff to talk about when it comes, and this episode is certainly something a lot of stuff that we want to talk about. Monica, you reached out to us when this show debuted, and you were like, "I want to talk about this. Please let me on to talk about this show." So we're excited to have you on to share some of that passion about this and kind of talk about both the plot and then the rest of our categories here. And if you're willing, give us some scores too. We're always open to you sharing your own scores. So
Will do.
all righty.
Right. So as we get into our thoughts first on the plot portion, so obviously you're reimagining Harley Quinn, who is originated in the original Batman the Animated Series and is now her own bona fide pop culture icon, like, of herself. Like, she's self-sustaining now outside of any Batman or Joker association. So I guess first things first, how do you feel about like going in such a drastic different direction for this version of Harley?
I liked it. I liked that they flipped the narrative on Harley
Mm-hmm.
and that she went from being this abused, gullible victim,
Mm-hmm.
sidekick to totally in control, doctor who's clever and calculating.
Mm.
And she's out of the Joker's shadow. She's just her own person, and she works with the police. She does profiling, and yeah, I like that. I didn't feel that it was in such an opposite direction. And I felt that it could be an extension of who Harley could be. That she could it could be a more grown up Harley.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the diversity of, why not have her be Asian? I mean, it's, there's no reason why she can't be.
Yeah, we talked about that, I think, in this series back in, I think it's actually the episode previous to this, the Firebug episode, and how they kind of handle Jim Gordon being like a black cop in this 1940s world and sort of the reality of what that is for him and how the show kind of addresses that in a slightly more subtle way. But similarly for a young Asian woman, a woman who is a doctor who has made a career for herself, who also is of Asian descent coming out of like World War II, and what that would be like to live in America at that point is like it's a very interesting like flavor to that to add on as well.
It changes also, I think, with it's funny that you said that, Monica, because it feels like it does still feel true to the character in a way that she is this like it's almost like that darker side of the Joker that we sometimes saw in Batman the animated series. We see it obviously far more often in the comics where you could it be more violent, but it's the, as Paul Dini put it, like the killer side of the Joker versus the clown side. And the characters switch in this from the light, bubbly, sort of flirtatious. She's flirtatious with Barb. She's flirtatious with Renee Montoya, asking. She's obviously very comfortable in her own skin, especially set in this 1940s, asking a woman cop out.
Mm.
But also the fact that she has this darker side to her too, that is truly devious. Everything changes about her. Her voice changes, her posture changes. We'll talk about that more in the way that she kind of carries herself, maybe in visuals, but like the whole character still sort of mirrors that more Joker maniacal, like evil dark side to him that still has this lighter clown like aspect to it. But yeah, I think they do portray that very well for, and it, while it's a departure, yeah, she's not the sidekick anymore. It does feed into what has been the more modern take on Harley as a character, where she is out on her own. She's not in joke. I mean, she's got her own cartoon, for God's sake, where she's the star of it at this point, where they kind of point that out, that she's not living in the Joker's shadow anymore. She is her own personality and has her own way of thinking. So the fact that they didn't introduce the Joker, I think, with her in this is also something that subverted expectations. You kind of expect them to go together. So introducing her first is certainly, I think, a different choice also for that character.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing you both kind of touched on a little bit, but just the little tiny switch amongst all of that of Harley, the doctor is the kind of bubbly, fun one, and Harley Quinn is Harleen is kind of it's very, and it mirrors Batman in that way, right?
Mhm.
Where her
Yeah.
public persona is outgoing and kind of almost plays slightly ditzy, or like she's just this happy-go-lucky person, and then in reality she's harboring like all of this darkness and
Yeah.
vengeance, for lack of a better word, in her soul. Like and I think that's interesting because I think that's always one of the things that when you think about the best rogues galleries in comic books, like why Batman's is always the top, is how different villains sort of reflect him ultimately. And
Right.
I think that's this version of Harley kind of is kind of a mirror image to Bruce in that way.
Also to add that I think there was a lot of parallels between Batman and Harley.
Hmm.
I think, I mean, they're both seeking justice, and they're both vigilantes. I mean, one
Hmm.
Mhm.
is a little darker than the other. And yeah, I mean, we'll get into it as we go, but I think there's, quite a bit there. But also, I want to add that I think that she seems less psychotic.
Mm.
Mm.
If she wasn't, I mean, if she was laughing like a lunatic when she was
Mhm.
torturing people, I mean,
Mhm.
she would seem more psychotic, but she's
Yeah.
very, very stern
Mm.
and in control.
Yeah.
So it's more calculated.
Yeah, it does give you more of I mean, the entire feeling for me for watching this episode after not having watched it for maybe a little over a year at this point, but is that this felt like it could have been a horror movie. Like the idea that she's a horror movie villain, and not in the way that, like, Michael Myers, or yeah,
Yeah, but like she
Freddy
kind of does
Krueger.
like Saw, like it's like Saw or something like that, where she's placing them in
It's
these
more
traps that are specific to like her perceived like of her perception of their shortcomings,
right.
of like why they were unhappy, why they ended up on her psychiatrist couch, so to speak, and then her taking that and using their flaws as their punishment.
Right. Yeah, and the fact that she's so, as you pointed out, Monica, like just even keeled, when like she's so subdued, and just seemingly she knows she's in control. She knows that she's able to manipulate each and every one of the people that she's brainwashing. Yeah, even when it seems like at the end when Batman is kind of overtaking the rest of the crew and is has discovered her secret. She still doesn't completely lose her mind. Once she figures out, she releases the brainwashed captives and then is able to get Batman captured. She kind of returns to that subdued state of, well, figure it out for yourself. Hope you can escape. Hope you can catch me, later.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah,
and more
she does say, we can unpack that childhood trauma.
Right. She does peg him, like she meets him for 5 seconds and she's like, "Oh, I figured you out."
Yeah, she's got him figured out. Yeah. And to her defense, I think that she does have a moral compass.
Mhm.
She is a very caring person. And as you can see by the receipts, that she's had many, many
Oh yeah.
sessions with these people. And she tells them that I've tried to get you to see the error of your ways and you still haven't changed. So she does give them a chance. I mean, she's allowing these people to, come to their senses, and
Mhm.
they're just not changing.
Right. She's
So she
giving
feels
them enough rope to hang themselves, so to
So
speak.
that's interesting to see that she does feel why she feels justified in the steps that she eventually takes, in that she has tried to break through. Yeah, it didn't even occur to me, like the amount of checks that one guy had written, looking through the checkbook where Batman thumbs through it, and it's just probably a stack of 100 checks or so there that he goes through. So
Mhm.
yeah, that is interesting. Something that I didn't think about, that it does feel like that, at least in her brain, justifies the actions that she's taken, why she's taken them. And it's interesting also, I feel like, that she has figured out how to utilize the weaknesses in each of the captives against each other, like, so that she doesn't have to lift her finger to do any of the work at that point. She's using her mind as a psychiatrist to be able to manipulate individually
Mhm.
each and every person that she has there, to the point where they're willing to do the work for her, and she doesn't have to get her hands dirty, so to
Mhm.
speak.
Yeah, yeah, that's another one of those parallels that I like, that she turned Hastings into her own Alfred.
Right? Yes.
And she's using his mansion for her playpen, and he's got a cliffside house,
Mhm.
mansion, and Batman has a cliffside mansion.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Yeah.
they both have their own layers in there.
Mhm.
And he's like he's this, I can't remember what he does, but he's obviously he's a wealthy businessman,
Hmm.
and he's driving her around.
Right.
Right. Yes.
He's
He's a
driving her.
henchman,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and takes her jacket, I think.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. Answers his own door. Like, Barbara is even
Yeah,
shocked that he answered his own door. I feel like in this sequence, one of the things that I guess that's a good segue for myself there is, this episode focuses a lot on Barbara Gordon too, Monica, for this, and while she isn't Batgirl in this series, although the pun could be there when she picks up the bat at the end,
yeah,
to break Batman out. She is a girl with a bat, so to speak. But I personally like that this episode shows, at least if they decide in the future to go that route where she decides to put on a costume, very much, this felt to me very much like how they introduced her in Batman the Animated Series, where you have her. She's not just somebody that decides to put on a costume one day. She has obviously the relationship with the GCPD, as a public defender. Her dad, obviously being the commissioner, helps, but she has the relationship with Renee Montoya. She's good friends with Harley, and then, but she clearly has this investigative side to her, and then also the desire to kind of be a hero, in trying to save Harley at the end. And I think that them laying the groundwork for that, whether that ends up being her putting on a full costume or not, was pretty interesting to focus so much on her heroism, I feel like, for this episode.
yeah, yeah. And I do like that she started out in a green suit, and then she ended up in the purple suit at the
I
end.
was like, of course, Batgirl colors. Like they even stuck that in.
There you go.
The other thing,
Yeah,
yeah, and I think that's interesting, and that's I think something they kind of do over this whole season, but is taking Barb as someone who is trying to work from within the system and is now slowly sort of seeing the value that like a Batman brings, even though he's not infallible and he's making his own mistakes. Like that she's starting kind of to work outside the lines when when she has to go visit this guy in Arkham, and like she starts to kind of piece together her own investigation, and she mentions like kind of offhandedly, well, apparently the cops think the only criminal in Gotham now is Batman, so they're not even like trying to figure out what's going on with these other like disappearances or anything. So I thought it was interesting of like her both trying to work within the system, but now sort of going along more along that route of seeking justice her own way when she realizes that there really isn't anyone else who's going to take an act like is going to take action on this.
Yeah, yeah. I liked all her detective work was really clever. And she is strong because
Mhm.
she pulled was it Deming?
The King Tut guy, right?
Yeah, yeah. She pulled him while he was, this big guy is going off the side of the
Ascending.
building and she grabs him and pulls him back.
Yeah, she had to have first of all, she had to have some speed to catch up with them,
Mhm.
up multiple flights of stairs. So she's got good cardio on top of
And
it.
Yeah.
And in heels, right? And heels and a skirt, she's running up the stairs to catch him and manages to keep her balance enough to pull him back to safety, keep him from jumping.
Yeah, pulls him down and jumps on top of him and holds
That's
him down.
right. Yeah. In time, just in time to subdue him. Um, one of the things that I was curious about was obviously they set up there is no mystery here as to who the character is. Obviously, if you've followed Batman, you know Harleen Quinzel is Harley Quinn. So, what was there any part of you that wishes there would have been more of a mystery about who the Harley Quinn character was? Because it kind of sets it up at the beginning where she's kind of this formidable person, but obviously we kind of know that it's Harleen, so we're kind of forced to sit on the sidelines and watch the other characters learn while
Yeah.
still knowing. I For me, I kind of wish. Obviously, I don't know how you do that without making because she was pivotal to those first couple of episodes and being, a resource for the police to kind of profile Batman and having her kind of if you introduce her here as this her first episode, then that's, you don't even have a
Right.
red herring like to use like that. But I feel like at least for the old series, when you had somebody that was a little bit more obvious as the villain, they would at least throw a red herring in here or there to kind of kick you off, to get you off the track a little bit. I kind of wish that they had kind of had one here for that. That's the only like real big nitpick that I have for this is that because there's no mystery as to who the villain is, you're just kind of waiting around for everybody else to discover who the villain is. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of like I didn't feel like there was as much gravitas to the rest of the story because of that. That's my one critique, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
gets
I could see that. I mean, it's how are you going to hide her? I mean,
Right,
it's
that's the
right.
so
thing.
obvious that
Right.
it's not,
To me,
yeah.
I
I don't
feel
know
like
how
if
they
you
do
did it on
that.
the old series, you wouldn't do the full like you reveal it's Harley in that first like cold opening sequence or the right after the scene where the guy's getting his feet tickled, right? She walks out of the shadows. I almost feel like you could have just maybe just showed the lower half of her face or maybe just had, her in silhouette where you kind of obviously acknowledge that it's
Yeah.
her. But once you do the full reveal, and some of that is also because of the marketing for the show, where they're like, this is Harley Quinn, this is what she looks
Right.
like
Right.
in the show. So when the character walks out of the shadow, you're like, okay, that's Harley Quinn, who is Harleen Quinzel.
Right.
So we already know there's no mystery about who's behind all of this. So I kind of like those stories. Obviously, there are stories where in the old show, in all cartoons, where the viewer gets the advantage of knowing who the villain is before the characters do. But I feel like there's usually a little bit more tension in trying to discover who that is, and there doesn't even seem to be like a race against the clock in this case where there's like an artificial time,
Hmm.
a time clock needed to discover who she is. Batman just kind of stumbles upon it. Barbara stumbles upon it, and then well, obviously we have the countdown to the explosion that happens after Batman gets trapped. But it doesn't. I think it was just lacking a little bit of tension there for me in you know, can either they discover who it is or the viewer discover who it is without real, knowing who the
Hmm.
villain is beforehand. So
Yeah,
that
that could be also because it's a what, 25-minute.
Right, right.
100%.
And
Absolutely.
also, I think the advertising, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
is they show you all the characters from the
100%.
get-go. So it's like there's no mystery there by the
Of
time you
course.
see it.
No,
Yeah.
no. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think I'm also looking at this, and we talked about this before we went on the air with Monica a little bit, but when you compare this show, which this show, as we've the 4 times before that we've reviewed this, we've talked about, had the impossible task of following Batman the Animated Series. Bruce Timm saying it was more Batman the Animated Series than Batman the Animated Series is his quote. And then but not being a direct ripoff or continuation of the show. The expectations for the show are incredibly high and are probably not able to be met based on what people's expectations are for media these days. So I don't envy them for having to. So releasing images of the new Harley Quinn beforehand, I'm not going to question that was a bad decision because it got people talking at the time, at least, for better or worse. So for all those reasons, I do think it is an interesting, especially with all the parallels that Monica pointed out here between our Batman character and our Harley Quinn. I think there is something there. I do wish that there was a little bit more of a. It feels like the episode wants to say something. Like I know we have our characters that are obviously her victims for the most part seem to be rich businessmen. We have that one scene where she's talking to the guy who complains about the audacity of his employees wanting to unionize and how that's the idea of that. And obviously that's a line that's meant to get a good chuckle, I'm sure, and an insider laugh from everybody involved. But the idea of a union, and her ultimately that being the thing that pushes her over the edge to kind of say, all right, well, I have to exact some punishment now because you're not getting it. I don't feel like it feels almost like she's the villain here. So you're not even saying like she's they don't come out and say that she's justified in her anger or her and then she just went about it the wrong way, like hey, she's right for being upset that this is his mindset or not learning the lesson, and she's going about it the wrong way. I think it's more left up to the viewer to kind of decide what the message is. And I just wish there was some sort of clearer statement because it kind of feels like they're trying to say something, or the writers were trying to say something, but not willing to really fully commit on what it was, and kind of leaving it up a more open-ended thought process there. And it also kind of feels we're not quite sure how she survived the gigantic fall onto the rocks at the end, but we know she did. But
Right.
that also felt. I would much rather have it just been Renee left at the cafe, kind of there. And if you bring her back in the future, that's fine. You can explain it there. But I would much rather have been Renee at the end, just kind of sad,
You would
standing
prefer to be
there.
a little bit more ambiguous.
Yeah, I would rather not have known that Harley had survived, and it kind of end on that downer note. But again, that's nitpicking. That's what we do here.
That's what we
That's why I gave plot a 7 out of 10. I think it's good, but I think there are a couple things that I would have changed if it were in my hands.
Nice. Yeah, I went 1 point higher. I went 8 out of 10. I think this is a really strong, like I said, I love, like, for all the reasons we just talked about of the different parallels between both Harleen and Batman and also Barbara and Batman in this episode. I think it takes an interesting road, and it does feel like also this, and we won't know until a season 2 hits the streaming service or whatever. But it does definitely felt like this will be a character that will be back hopefully in the next season, and hopefully some of those threads that you mentioned, Cal, like like more of her interpersonal relationship and sort of the conflicting feelings that Renee or Barbara might have for her as their friend or potential love interest in Renee's case, like maybe that'll be expanded upon in future episodes, hopefully.
Sure. Monica, what about you? Would you score this?
I really like the plot, and I sort of saw this as Harley's revenge.
Sure. Yeah.
And you don't know what her background is. You don't know if there is childhood trauma. You don't know. I mean, it doesn't justify, but
Sure.
it could be more understandable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you don't know, yeah, there's a lot of things we don't know yet. So,
Sure.
and we also do know that these are horrible people.
Right. Right.
And, she's, like I said, she's worked with them for a long time, and um, not to justify, but it's more understanding.
Sure,
And
it's pushed her to that point. Absolutely. When you hear the same stories and nobody they're just like I can't imagine being in that position to listen to somebody complain about their what we would identify as like good problems. Like, oh my gosh, I made so much money last week and now my employees want to unionize. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah, these are horrible people. And, like the ones who told his son, if you're not bleeding,
oh
you're
yeah.
not working hard enough.
Yep.
So these are like people who are terrorizing their families.
Yeah, that's true. Good
And,
point.
calling his workers chattel, that's,
Yeah. Yep.
really awful.
Yep.
So yeah, I give the plot a 9 out of 10.
There we go. Love it. Love it, Monica. That's awesome. One of the other things I'll touch before we move on to animation and visuals is, and if you guys have thoughts on this, I'd love to hear. But one of the things I thought was interesting is thus far into the show, Batman is really this cold, icy, like especially when he's Batman, when he's not Bruce, he's this cold, icy, emotionless character. And I feel like this is the first time when Barbara at the end is crying because Harley has seemingly dropped to her death. Batman emotes for the first time. It's not visual. He doesn't make any faces, but he says to Barbara, "I'm sorry." Like he sort of tries in whatever cold, twisted way that he can to empathize or sympathize with her over this loss that she's experiencing. And it's the first step I feel like that we get for this Batman character, which we see in the final episode. It finally he takes a much bigger step. But this is the first step that we see of him humanizing a little bit and being able to stand there and see someone else experiencing pain and not just leaving, like, or disappearing. He stays there long enough to kind of sit there with her in her pain and then, he at least apologizes, like, I'm sorry, which is the best that he can do in that, which I thought, I was like, okay, so that it doesn't feel so abrupt in that final episode now where he finally does seem to kind of turn this corner. It's like it started very gradually here where he actually does, and it's through this relationship with Barbara that he has where he does start to see people as human beings as opposed to just their jobs or their criminals, their police officers, their
Mhm.
public defenders. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, same. And I like how from when we see him as the little boy,
Hmm.
and, gradually over time, it's like a slow burn of each episode. There's a little bit more and a little bit
Hmm.
more, and
Hmm.
it really builds on it. And I like that about this series is that it's, you're introducing all these characters in, in a slow pace, but it's,
Hmm.
you're building on them.
Yeah.
And I like that you're not just, here,
Right.
Batman. It's
Right. 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 You get to learn about the why that he is, but it's also there is character growth that occurs during the arc of the he doesn't just stay, like you said, he doesn't just stay Batman. He changes throughout from this, and this is like one of the first signs that you see of him actually kind of having he has a heart under there. Maybe his heart didn't grow 5 sizes that day. It just grew like a quarter of a
it
size.
does in the next episode.
Right,
Right.
exactly. Exactly. Here's where it started, though.
Mhm.
All right, well, let's move on to visuals and animation. This is where I'm very excited to talk to Monica. This is what you do, Monica. So this
Uh-oh.
is every time we've had you on, though. This is where we just sit back and we're like, all right, we're gonna let Monica talk about what she saw.
That's right.
The first thing before you talk about what everything that you saw, we'll let you kind of fly the plane with what you have as far as your highlights. But one of the things that I wanted to mention, in case you didn't mention it, is the opening credits. So the opening credits obviously are kind of pieced together from footage from the series, which is a little bit different. Obviously, the Batman the Animated Series, the classic one, had its own opening title sequence. This one takes footage, but also puts this really interesting filter over top of it that gives it that dark deco feel. And I was talking to Liam before we got you on, and I was like, I feel like that was probably something. There were some things that when Monica was doing The Adventures Continue, there were tricks that you did to kind of homage that dark deco style in your work also. Was there a specific thing? Because that's what to me made The Adventures Continue feel authentic, was obviously these were the characters, but it looked like the cartoons that we were used to from watching it as a kid over and over again. So was there anything that you did in your coloring that to try and invoke that sort of dark deco style that was so influential from that original series?
Well, I wish I could say there was a trick, but there wasn't. I'm a huge fan of the show, and I would constantly on my second monitor, I'd be
Mhm.
watching the shows,
Okay.
There's like what, 85 episodes,
Hmm.
So I would have them on and I would look at them and I would just paint them. I mean, there's
Wow.
no filter, there's no, it's just, painted, we're airbrushed. And
Wow.
so it's, yeah, it just, it's when it's a labor of love, it's, it hits different. I mean,
Yeah,
it just
yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'm sure it probably showed that we all were so involved in what we were doing that it
100%.
wasn't just, like a lot of people I know called it a cash grab or whatever. And it's so frustrating when people say that because it's like, sometimes I would just spend like 2 days on a page. And it's like, wow, it's like I could be like, doing anything else and I would
Right.
make more money if I was,
Right. Right.
but it's just when you love what you do, it's just you put all of yourself into it. And
Love that.
that's what it was. It was just a lot of hand painted and
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's
Well, that makes it even more impressive to me because to me, I don't know, maybe there's probably some sort of filter that they're using for the opening credits to give it that look, or maybe there isn't. I don't know, but the fact that there wasn't with you, it was just heart and soul that you were pouring into your work makes it all the more impressive. So, thanks for sharing that.
yeah, I do believe they probably put some grainy filter over it, and
Okay.
I think it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
I love that the beginning, the credits and
Mhm.
the music. I think it just is perfect.
Yeah.
I give that a 10 out of 10.
There we go.
Noted.
There we go. All right, so let's talk about, we kind of touched on it briefly, but we redesigned Harley Quinn for this. Gone is the red. There's no red at all. We still have kind of a split color here. I think she's got three little head tassels or whatever you call those things on her Harlequin hood. What were your first thoughts when you saw this redesign of Harley? Obviously, she's gone through several different redesigns over the last
Mhm.
several years, especially from where she started in Batman the Animated Series to where she is in the comics now. Now she doesn't even have a mask.
Right.
She's just got blonde hair and bomber jacket or whatever she's wearing. And what do you think about this look being so different than what we were used to from the Harley character, Monica?
I mean, it's different. It's she's no longer a pinup,
Yeah,
True.
tiny little thing.
yep,
So she's bigger,
hmm,
she's more realistic.
sure.
And I like the green and yellow. That's I mean, they just went in an opposite direction.
Hmm.
And she reminds me more of the Venice Jesters, the
Mm.
which is I think the original thought behind Harley was
Hmm.
the Commedia dell'arte,
Okay.
the jesters of the Italian theater,
Uh-huh.
and I do believe it's more aligned with that
Okay. That makes
than
sense.
the the one that we saw the original design.
Hmm.
So yeah, I like that. I like her white eyes and
Oh
the black
yeah.
lips. That's really cool.
Yep.
And she's got the little red cheeks, which is
Hmm.
like the Joker or the clown cheeks.
For
Hmm.
sure.
And Yeah, I do like the design. I mean, I think with all of these designs, I would have liked more detail on them,
Yeah, that's fair.
but I do think they still work.
Sure.
And yeah, I do like the character. I like the design. I like her in her civilian
Yeah.
form also. I like the 40s do with like, I think she has like the Betty Page bangs. Like,
Yep. She's got the little
um,
bangs, the little do in the back.
yeah,
Yep.
that's really cool. And she wears the pink suit.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do like her design.
I feel like there's also a juxtaposition from her. Again, we go from this lighter, bubblier side. She's wearing pink. She's got her hair up. That character is constantly smiling too, like in almost every scene, unless she's like being pensive or a little bit menacing, like she is in this. Like she generally is pretty happy-go-lucky and has a positive emote. Where the flip side of that, she's very dark. Obviously, she almost completely menacing, almost no expression as Harley. And the difference, like you said, was obviously in Batman the Animated Series, she has these gigantic, like Bruce Timm classic eyes that just stick out and are like the main function of her emotion sometimes, just the way that her eyes kind of change shape. And here, because she's got just white irises and nothing there. It's just completely, it's very, very different and very almost like, yeah, it's very upsetting to like the character feels more evil, which obviously is what we're going for, a darker character here and not that bubbly character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it plays to the character I likened her to is Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men.
Oh,
Like where it's like
that's bad.
almost more terrifying when the person is like really calm
Oh yeah.
about what they're doing when they're doing something this like outlandish and violent.
Uh-huh.
Like sometimes
Yeah.
it's a little bit more like it makes it feel more stressful, I feel like, as an audience, like watching this character do the things she's doing because, like you said, Monica, she isn't this wild, cackling lunatic who's, in the style of like, the Joker or even, other versions of Harley. So like the fact that she's so calm the whole time whenever she's in the jester outfit, I think really like you both talked about, like her posture changes, and yeah, it's like it feels like almost like it just like feels very cold whenever she's on the screen because she's so direct and
Hmm.
so, yes, like she speaks very softly, she speaks very calmly
Hmm.
when, even when, Batman's bearing down on her at the end, it doesn't really crack. She still feels like got it all. She's got it all figured out. Like that's even almost more scary, I feel like, than the cackling lunatic version
Really?
somehow.
I think the opposite. It reminds me of like, I don't know if you saw the film Killing Zoe, but it's like
Hmm.
this, these just like lunatics, like just
Yeah.
Hmm.
like
I
torturing and killing people, and you're
Sure.
just like, it's
That's
terrifying when they're like laughing when they're doing.
Right. So yeah, maybe it's like not better or worse, just a
yeah.
different
But
flavor.
then, to what you said, the Javier Bardem character in No
Mhm.
Country, it's just, yeah, I mean, that's got to be the probably the scariest character ever.
Yes, absolutely. So
What else, Monica, did you have anything else that, as you know, as somebody who works in the visual arts, like what stuck out for you as far as the way, and it could be just the overall series too, as far as like the way that things look, obviously the aesthetic of that 1940s design, if there was something that stuck out to you as far as this the way this episode looked.
I really like that they stuck with a dark deco style,
Hmm.
and I think that I want to say that it's hard to, copy Vitas because it was drawn on black paper.
Right.
So
right.
you've got, instead of light glowing behind the art, you've got black, which
Right.
is
Hmm.
really cool.
Right.
I do wish this was darker,
Hmm.
but then, there's a lot of daylight in this series.
Hmm.
But I do like that when they do go dark, like in the next episode, it is very dark,
Right.
with the carnival and the
Hmm.
glows. And
Hmm.
so I do like that. I like the room. The King Tut room was really cool.
Yeah.
The glows, and then they've got some really nice long shadows, like when Barbara is chasing King Tut in Arkham. I like, the angles. I like the, really beautiful paintings. A lot of really nice backgrounds.
The backgrounds were really neat. That was to me, that was one of the coolest things was when this show came out, was seeing some of the people that worked on the show get to post some of those backgrounds in digital form, and thinking about how nowadays, like, we clamor anytime we can see any of the original artwork from BTOS, we're like, we eat it up. We're like, yes, this is so cool. We get to see like how the original artwork looked in its unedited, like, original way. And this, it obviously, in our modern world where artists can just upload this to their own personal portfolios online, and it's going to live hopefully forever there. It's like, it was so neat to see some of these individual pieces like that, and the work that these these designers worked on so hard, kind of just standing out there on their own without the animation on top of it, and to be able to appreciate the individual pieces there. Yeah, I think as far as the artwork goes, I think the only complaint that I have about this, especially in going back between this and looking at obviously our classic series, again, hard not to compare here, but I think it's just with modern animation, is that just the budget is very different than from what the budgets were for those older cartoons. And because of that, the characters seem a little bit more stiff when they're on screen. There's a lot less gesturing, a lot less emotion. They kind of just stand there. A lot of scenes you'll see just mouths moving and maybe a slight tilt or a slight movement, but there is clearly a lack of the characters just feel very stiff in certain sequences, especially in some of those scenes where Harley's sitting in the chair and she's talking to the patient, or the three girls are sitting around the table, or even at the dinner that Harley and Renee are on when they're on their date. That sequence seemed very, like, there's parts of that seem very stiff, and a scene where you would expect it to be a little bit more, there'd be a little bit more movement because you're on a date, there's romance in the air, and they're just kind of sitting there. Even when characters are like kind of walking to the car or coming out of a building, it makes me wish that this was made back when budgets were a little bit bigger and people were willing to kind of put more money into the animation, because it does make it does stand out to me, especially when you're looking at this versus some of the older cartoons. So I think we talked about that when we looked at the first four episodes, is that there is a lot of stiffness in our character movement from scene to scene. Obviously, it's not the fault of the people that are designing the show, but it is a part of that animation, unfortunately, that we kind of look at here. There are a couple things we mentioned. Barbara wearing the purple at the end, getting her purple, and then picking up a baseball bat was so cool to me. I was like, that's so fun. Obviously, Batwoman in the comics, in the I think it's the DC Bombshells, carries an actual bat around as her weapon of choice. So the female Batwomen certainly have a weapon of choice when it comes to that.
Named
stuff.
after them.
That's right. I do think the sequence, though, where at the end, one of the things that I thought was a little bit more beautifully animated was the sequence with the explosion at the end, Batman, falling, Harley falling, and then Barbara catching, like that scene where they kind of show her hanging on the board. They cut to the board and the board beginning to crack, and then cutting back to her holding onto Harley's hand. And it's interesting because Liam pointed out a DCAU parallel that we didn't even think of, or that I had never thought of, that he thought that kind of invoked.
Yeah, so it's the flashback for Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, where Batgirl is holding Harley over the ruins of Arkham, and then Harley falls to, we think, her death, and then she shows up at the end of the movie. So it's like I saw that, and I was like, this has to be on purpose, right? Like, that was kind of what I wanted to ask both of you. I was like, that's on purpose, right? Like, there's no way that was like just not like a subtle little, like, it's not the same, but it's,
it has to be, right? Based on who's involved with this, I don't know how you couldn't, especially with one of the funnest or most fun sequences in this is when Batman's going through the newspaper archives. They slip in a whole bunch of fun little Easter eggs there.
You want me to read them off to you?
Please, absolutely.
Okay, so it's the Gotham Gazette. And I like that, the technology is, of the 40s. It's not, they don't have computers. So yeah, it's one of the articles is Stromwell drug charges dropped, which
Mhm.
is referring to Arnold Stromwell,
Mhm.
uncle to Tony Zuko.
There you go.
And then we've got Carnival coming to Gotham, which is the next
Oh,
There we go.
episode.
Yep.
And then we've got Hill Reeves feud escalates,
There we
referring
go.
to Mayor Hamilton Hill and Arthur Reeves.
There you go.
And then we've got nationwide bestseller, How to Stop Working and Influence People. That cracks me up. That is by Jonathan Crane.
There we go.
And then we've got Officer Wilkes suspended, which was Montoya's partner.
That's right.
We've
Yeah.
got Rare Flower Found at Site of Proposed Prison.
Mhm.
That's from Pretty Poison.
Yeah.
And then we've got March gives bizarre lecture at Gotham Zoo,
Mhm.
Dr. March.
Yep.
Mhm.
And labor camp shuts down, probably, I assume, referring to the Forgotten from
Yep.
BT.
100%. Yep.
And Valestra skips town, Salvador
There
Valestra.
we go. Sal Valestra.
Phantasm one.
There we go.
And then we've got bats in your basement, call Sherman Exterminator. The kid from I've
That's
Got
it.
Bats in My Basement.
Yeah, that's a
That's-
deep cut one
that's
right
my
there.
And then we've got Lawford to be tried separately, and that's referring to Warren Lawford, the fox, member of the
Oh.
Terrible Trio.
There we go.
Okay.
Here's Tim's least favorite Batman the Animated Series episode of
Yeah.
all time. Made a little cameo here, and I love that.
And then we've got Boyle out of Gotham Core.
Okay.
That's CEO Ferris Boyle
Yep, from
from the Freeze.
Oh,
yep,
yeah,
yep,
Gotham
yep.
City.
Heart of Ice.
Marvelous.
And then I think there was another one I didn't write down. It was scientist's daughter
Killed in
found
car
like
crash.
dead in a car crash. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Heart of Steel, right? That's
Yeah.
Okay.
Brandon
Okay, I
Dwayne.
wasn't sure of that one.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
Rossum's daughter is killed in a car crash before he starts making the robot
That's
duplicate.
why Hardak exists. Yeah.
Right.
There we go. There
Well,
we are.
Thank you for doing our work for us, Monica.
Great compilation.
We were talking about that before. Like, do we have them all written down? I'm not sure if we got all of them. So one of us came prepared. Of
There
the
we
three
go.
of us, so.
And that's fun. I know that I know at that point whether or not any of those actually show up in the show or not. I mean, to me, it seems like it's just a fun little wink and a nod because it's obviously not. It's blink and you miss it type stuff. So
Yeah.
it's more of a nice little pause this and have some fun with it. You know,
Yeah.
actually, other than the circus showing up next week actually does
Exactly.
happen. So we'll see.
Yeah, they cracked me up, so I wrote them down.
Yeah, I mean they're great gags, and then yeah, it's fun because it also kind of it makes our nerd brains run wild of like, so like some of the stuff from BTAS maybe also happens in this world, but in a different way. Like,
Yeah.
they or had a different result, or who knows, the butterfly effect of it all of like what
Mhm.
what could still be the same while so much has changed is fun to think about, certainly.
It could be fun to see some of those characters. Also, maybe we see some of those characters show up in season 2. So we get, Scarecrow or Jonathan Crane or Poison Ivy or somebody else that shows
Sherman
up.
from
Well, if they were mentioned, they
Right, exactly.
You could at least see like the truck driver.
Yeah. Overall, again, I think my main sticking point with the show continues to be just the stiffness of the animation. I do think that there is some good stuff from the sequences that we talked about. I love the little Easter eggs. That gave me an extra point there too, I think. And I think overall, I stuck with my 7 there. I gave a 7 out of 10 for visuals and animation. Also, I think it's good. The sequence with Batman doing his investigation and him taking on the police, him taking the police out one by one through the smoke. I think to me, that's the standout scene for the episode. Like if you're gonna watch one scene from this, it's all right. This is super cool, Batman.
The most Batman-y. That, and I like, as I put in my notes, Batman skulking around like a big Dracula. I was like, there's a lot of him in silhouette in this. And then in parentheses, I wrote cool as hell. Because there's a lot of Batman in silhouette, which is like such a classic, Batman trope when he's, when he's not mid-fight or whatever, to just see him all draped in the shadow and you just see the ears and the eyes, kind of moving through the scene. So it's like I like that we get some of that as he's investigating as well.
Sure.
What did you guys think of his costume?
I honestly love the homage to like the original Bob Kane sort of design. I like that it still feels authentically Bruce Timm. Like it feels like a Bruce Timm drawing, and it
Mhm.
does feel like how he ends up looking, when we get to Justice League and all of that with the longer ears. I like the shorter gloves. I've kind of always liked.
Mhm.
I kind of wish they were purple
I was going
instead
to
of.
ask Monica,
Yeah.
do you wish he had the purple gloves? Like,
I don't. I like the
okay.
black. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I like the overall aesthetic.
Mhm.
I think for the show too, I think it works. If this was set in modern times, I don't know that it would make a whole lot of sense, but a period piece from the 40s, it makes it feel kind of more authentic to that. What's your take on the Batman costume?
Yeah. I mean, I would have preferred the point on the cape
Mhm.
Hmm.
in the front, but then it looks like the um what is it? The 92? No. I don't remember what year it is. 97.
Okay,
Um yeah, which is my favorite.
sure,
Mhm.
But you got to change it a little bit. So
sure,
I think with enough of a change where it's different and you can tell where it belongs, but it's still cool. So I
sure.
do like the gray and the black, the gray being slightly a purple gray. I like
Hmm.
that.
Yeah,
It's really cool. And I do like the long ears.
Mhm. Do you
longer.
miss like the cell shading, like the blue cell shading on the cape and cowl? Is that something does it feel like does that fit more because it's a little bit of a stripped down universe compared to the
Mm,
to BTAS, or do you think that makes it feel more flat?
Yeah, it feels a little flat, I think.
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that and visually I think another thing that I wish I mean I know we like to talk about what we like and now
Right, right.
It's okay. No, we can talk
I
about
like
what we would do. Yeah, we would do,
yeah.
Especially for
I think probably because it's hand painted,
hmm
the BTAS,
hmm
there's more texture. So
hmm
it seems a little flat at
Agreed.
times,
No, agreed.
for the characters. So yeah, it's like you've got, just flat faces
Yeah.
with
hmm
and the thick black
Hmm.
line art. I think the line could have been a little thinner.
Agreed. I know
Um,
exactly what you're talking about. There are times, especially when you're looking at Batman straight on, there is almost no dimension to his face because of the way that he's standing there. So it does give like in the Batman the animated series, you would always get sort of like because of how the nose went or how his chin sat, it looked like he had a three-dimensional face, even if you're staring
yeah.
straight at him. Whereas this, it does feel at times like it is
Hmm.
kind of just like it's recessed almost into his
Yeah.
into the cowl.
And
Uh,
sometimes from the side, the characters have really flat faces. It's like
mhm.
really like just like you could put a ruler to
Yeah. That's
like
true.
the forehead is like really long and
Yeah.
straight.
hmm
It is. Yeah, there is some of that where you do lose the dimension, I think. That makes sense.
Yeah. But overall, I think, I mean, it still looks good. It doesn't bother me.
Fair enough. You have a score, Monica, that you would feel?
So that's visuals.
Mm-hmm.
hmm
I gave it a 7.
All righty. There we go. Right there with me. Liam, what about you?
Yeah, I gave it an 8 out of 10, just a
All
little
right.
bit higher. Some other little minor things I wanted to point out. I think the thug that's wrapped around the telephone pole or the light post that Batman's like menacing when he first sees King Tut at the start of the episode, I think is dressed like Marlon Brando from, is it Rebel Without a Cause? Like the motorcycle jacket and the little
Uh-huh.
hat.
That sounds right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I thought that was a fun. We've talked about it before. There's a lot of old Hollywood actors and actresses that are the basis for the character models in this show. So I thought that was a fun one to throw in there. And then yeah, just the fact that they don't ever call him King Tut because I feel like there's a weird legal thing with DC where you can't use that name
Oh.
because it originated in the 66 show. So maybe it's
Mm.
like whoever owned like whatever the rights with that show are,
Oh.
he's tangled up in that or something. But like I love that, you know, one of the wackiest, like silliest characters from the,
Yeah.
from I hold that Adam West show in very high esteem. So it was fun to work that complete ridiculous character into this, more theoretically serious, grounded take of. and doing it. And then yeah, just like Harley having this like menagerie of hypnotized former billionaires in what weird, creepy costumes. Like she's got like the Pagliacci clown, she's
Mm-hmm.
got the schoolboy, the baby, and the king.
Yep. The
Like she
king,
has her own
the
little
king who has a black eye, a
right.
severely deformed
And
face
like
after.
shattered teeth and stuff from
And I love that quote too. The tables have turned, Mr. Collins.
that's really good.
The kings don't run this court anymore. The jester
Really good.
does.
That's
So creepy.
but yeah, that hurt. Just the idea again, where fingers crossed we see this character again in a season 2 or beyond, because I just love the idea of Harley having like a weird menagerie of crazy hypnotized former patients in silly costumes. I think that's a great like addition to her having her own weird twisted henchman group.
There you go. All right, well let's move on here to talk briefly about music. So music we have so Frederick Weidman or Weidman is the composer for this series, and as Monica already talked about, like we know we've talked about, or the last time we reviewed this series, we talked about the orchestral nature of everything. We have the live orchestra, or it
Mhm.
certainly sounds like a live orchestra that was used for the recording for this. And that opening theme is really, while it's not quite as memorable as the Tim Burton theme or the Shirley Walker theme, I feel like it's there, it's recognizable, it's unique enough for you to kind of pick it out. And on the soundtrack that was released, there are 3 tracks from this specific episode. I think there's 3 tracks, but they're kind of essentially what they do in the episode is they break up a couple of the tracks to play. Like one track is broken up into 2 or 3 parts and played at different parts during the episode, and then the other 2 it works the same way. But um, I think what's stood out to me is, and this kind of hammers home the point that I made before, where this feels like it's rooted in sort of a horror film type of aesthetic, is the sound, the Harley Quinn theme that kind of plays
Mhm.
is this sort of really messed up like clown jester carnival sound that's played sort of like in this weird minor key, and then you have those sharp like string scrapes down the violin or
Yeah.
down the whatever
Like nails on a
that sound like
chalkboard,
nails
but
on a
but
chalkboard.
strings.
Oh, like it is creepy, but in like, yeah, this fits this character type of
Mhm.
way. Like it is, it's so good. Like listening to them in isolation too, just listening to the actual soundtrack, like, ugh, gave me the heebie-jeebies.
Absolutely.
But that was the piece that stuck out for me, I think, is that. And then you do have the Batman theme kind of played in little tiny parts over top of that. But I really like the Harley Quinn theme a lot too. Was there anything for music that you really liked or that stuck out to you, Monica?
Yeah, I like that the first time we're in the playpen, the music is like a creepy, like it sounds like a creepy nutcracker.
Oh
It's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
That's
really
perfect
good.
way to describe
and then
Yeah, that's
and
good.
then like it gets ominous, and then when Batman's in the playpen, it sounds like this satanic like chanting.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm,
like
Yeah.
this, like it reminds me of The Omen.
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And so that was really cool. It's kind of like playing up the same music, but
Mhm.
darker, and then it
Yep.
kind of evolves into this satanic
Yeah.
chanting. So that's
Yeah.
really cool.
So creepy. Yep. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that the darker turn when Batman arrives and she releases the all the guys after him. Like at that point, it is sort of this, yeah,
Mhm.
darker turn. Um, I think the piece that they play at the end also, so there's a piece. The music definitely switches to a more. It's almost tragic when Barbara is trying to save Harley, and then it really turns into a softer, tragic piece when Renee takes the phone call at the end, and she realizes that really the only person that maybe she's able to have this romantic relationship with, that she's met, that she's really interested in and is really attracted to because of her bubbly personality, being so forward and interested in her. She's now has to kind of let that go for whatever reason. So you do get this sort of like really sad emotional piece that plays at the end, that as she kind of has to put her head down and Charlie Brown walk away from the jazz club. So it plays very well, I think, for the episode. I thought the music was really strong.
Yeah, that's actually something I meant to mention in visuals, but combined with the music, that last shot, we end the episode on Renee and the camera just kind of pulls out and she's standing in this little claustrophobic little phone booth and there's no one around her. And like just the isolation and like the moment of like thinking again, she's a lesbian woman in the 1940s. Like it's life is not easy for her anyway, it couldn't be, right? Just for the time. So like thinking that maybe she had finally made a connection and someone that was helping kind of bring her out of her shell, and then having that just cut so quickly and like yeah, the isolation, the visual combined with how the music comes in there. It's like, man, you really like they really rip your heart out for Renee by the end of this episode.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's because you know that there's no way that this could ever work.
Right.
And and she's standing there, and I believe the street looks like it's wet, like it's raining. So it's just this really tragic sort of end where it's like it can never be. They will
Right.
never. There's no way of, she could, because she's Harley's been exposed, and everybody knows who she is. So there's no coming back and you know whatever,
Yeah.
just
You can't salvage it. Yeah, it's
okay.
done, man.
Yeah,
It's done. It's over.
it's a done deal.
Right, exactly. Which is it, it sucks for Renee because it felt like she was initially not interested and then she kind of got her hopes like she got her hopes up. She allowed herself to be a little bit more vulnerable. She kind of let her guard down a little bit from the tough exterior of being the detective, to kind of allow Harley in a little bit, and then to have that ripped away at the last minute, and to deal with the fact that she's, responsible for this criminal activity is got to be a double whammy for her. So the music kind of hitting that and really driving home the tragic feeling that Renee was going through, I thought was really, really, really great for that. I thought music was really strong for this. I went with an 8 out of 10 for my score. I do think that music is used a little bit differently as it is sort of in most modern cartoons than it was for all the DCAU cartoons. So it's a little bit different in how they play it. But I think for this particular episode, having that menacing sort of creepy clown carnival sound. And then, as Monica beautifully put it, the creepy nutcracker sound effects, and the music box, like all of that kind of working together to create this really, like it really drove home the fact that this is a character to be afraid of, even if she doesn't look menacing and she doesn't sound menacing. The music drove home the fact that she's dangerous. So, yeah, I gave music an 8 out of 10 for my score. What about you?
Yeah, I also gave it an 8. So
There you go.
we're 2 for 2 there. Yeah, I think this is I'd have to go back and look at our scores for the first 4 that we reviewed about a year ago, but I think this is one of the best episodes musically I think that we've reviewed so far in this series. I just think like it from again, like you said, at enhancing Harley's characteristics to, the big, the action beats with Barbara to what we just talked about with Renee. I feel like I mean, that's part of the music, that's part of the soundtrack's job, right? Is to invoke whatever the feeling the characters are on screen. And when we just finished talking about how sometimes the visuals of the show, whether it's a budget reason or whatever, can be a little flat or a little bit leaving you wanting more, I feel like the music is picking it up. Like it's doing a little heavy lifting here to, maybe make up for some of the not necessarily maybe shortcomings, not the right word, but just like driving home what the emotional intention of the scene is.
Sure. Monica, what about you? What was your score for music?
A little bit higher, I gave it a 9.
There we go.
Yeah, I
Love
thought it accented everything really well.
Agreed. All right. Well, let's bring it home with our final category of the day, which is going to be our voice actors and actresses for this week. Liam's got our list pulled up here, so we'll talk through a couple of the characters here and talk about the individual performances they gave and give our thoughts on them as we go.
That's right. So, I mean, I have to mention playing Fletcher Deming is David Krumholtz, who folks would probably know he's like the head elf in the first Tim Allen Santa Claus movie.
Oh, get out of town.
And then he's was also on the show Numbers. He's
Okay.
Mr. Numbers.
Yeah.
I never watched it. But it was on for like 8 years, I'm pretty sure. We talk about that sometimes where it's like these actors were on shows that like were very popular and then just for whatever reason like didn't get picked up in streaming or whatever. So they're almost like a semi-lost media now, even though there's like he was on this popular show for 8 years, but he's playing one of our billionaires. We also have David Kay playing Hastings. I do like him because he has this very droll like you kind of hit it, Monica. He's her Alfred. Like he's just this very droll, like British, slow speaking, not a lot of emotion, but it works
Even
so
looks
well.
like Alfred.
Yes.
It does. Yeah.
Especially like the 60, like the Adam West show, like he very much has that look. I love that version of him though, because especially once you find out that he's this, billionaire real estate magnate or whatever they say, and it's like, and now he's answering the door and like you said, helping her with her coat and all that, and just like the very droll way that he's completely accepted this like subservient role to this woman that's that's outsmarted him and kind of broken him. It's like I love all of our various like crazy insane billionaire characters in this have a a lot of fun, but I think Mr. K as Hastings maybe gets the most fun out of those group.
I like his line to Barbara is, "This is an invasion of privacy." Like it's not
Shouldn't
clear.
Dr. Quinzel's client list
That's
really
right.
be private?
Yeah. He's just taken aback that somebody has this information. And it's not quite clear whether he's like. It seems to me the King Tut character is the only one that is kind of like completely under a mind control or a mind altering type of position. Hastings, I mean, he just kind of seems like he's there, and he's just for whatever reason he's decided to be subservient to Harley. So it's just kind of the fact that somebody has figured out that he's chosen to do this with his life is taken he's taken aback by that. I love that.
Absolutely. So elsewhere we have Jim Peary playing Emerson Collins. He's also the schoolboy patient, who's I think the one that has the "if you aren't working, you aren't bleeding" reaction, and then where he's writing his name on the board. That's quite a bit of fun. Some other quick hits I'll hit briefly. We have Jason Watkins as Alfred. Not much for him to do in this episode, but we also have Gary Anthony Williams. He's playing Detective Flass. He plays the elf, which is another one that's like, speaking of the creepy Nutcracker, is like where she's making him look through all these Christmas lights. It's like there's one bad bulb in there.
I want to know what his story was that led to that being his punishment, that he had to go through the light.
6-episode miniseries on that guy.
That is a punishment to find.
Yeah, oh my gosh, it is. Yes.
Right. Who had like, and it's such a universal like who when they're getting the Christmas decorations out, if you celebrate Christmas, hasn't had to deal with that at one point. Like, I know there's one. I know there's one here somewhere.
Funny.
But then we have John DiMaggio playing Harvey Bullock briefly, and also he's the baby patient who, speaking of Easter eggs for Batman, he does say "puddin'," which felt pretty intentional for a Harley Quinn episode. So
right, put in a different way this time. She's not the one saying it.
Absolutely. And then we'll talk we just talked about her character arc kind of in this episode. Michelle Bonilla playing Renee. That's one of those things we talked about, I think, going back to that POV episode of the original series, how much we liked that Renee character who spawned out of the animated series before, becoming a character in the comics, and how we always wish there was more focus on her in the rest of the original BTOS. So speaking of characters that are kind of going on a journey throughout the series, we talked about that with Batman and Barbara. Like this is, again, kind of all of these characters are kind of being pushed to the edge of, can we work within this system that is so corrupt and a society that is so uninterested in even trying to understand or accept who you are? Like, and so Renee going on this like heartbreaking journey where she is so like almost she can barely get words out around Harley because she's so like taken with her, and Harley is such like a domineering personality. So I think Miss Bonilla does a great job as Renee, just being like, playing that vulnerability despite being like this, badass tough, lady cop at the same time. Like we've seen her in action already in the series. It's like we know she can take care of herself, but it's the emotional side, right? It's like running into a burning building with people shooting at you. That's easy for her. It's like being emotionally vulnerable is what scares her, and I think that's really reflected in Miss Bonilla's performance.
Yeah, I really like her character. It's she's very witty and funny, and I like when she's, with Harley, she says the thing about those spinny things, that's the technical word for
Yeah.
it. I'm surprised you knew that. Or,
That was a good line. Yeah, that and it does show, and I think Miss Benia's performance kind of is great in that scene because it shows that she is coming out of that shell a little bit. Like she laughs, like she chuckles. Like that's the first time. Usually she's kind of got this stern, like no nonsense, like all business type of personality, and then she is kind of letting her walls down here, which then in turn makes that final conversation so tragic. So yeah, it's a good performance from Miss Benia, I think.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Then we have Crystal Joy Brown as Barbara Gordon. Again, we've already kind of talked about her getting her own spotlight, both as a detective in and of her own right, and then also as her own action hero. I do
Mhm.
love the bit. This is another visual thing I should have mentioned in visuals, but that she kicks off her heels before like the
Mhm.
stuff really goes down at the end. She's like, "All right, this is serious." That's just like a fun little gag. But I like I said, I do think she does a great job again wrestling with this idea. And again, the scene I think where she kind of goes to Harley and confronts her about, the King Tut guy who's locked in Arkham now and being like, "Do you know this guy? What's going on? He seemed to know your name," and the way that Harley lies to her very casually, and then Barbara kind of dealing with that betrayal of her friend when she already, her dad's going through this issue. Like she already kind of is like her friend list is getting pretty small of like who she can rely on in this system. So I think like in a different way, it's not a romantic relationship, but how like we see Barbara kind of struggling with losing one of her closest relationships that we've seen to this point in the series.
Yeah, um I know in the coffee shop when they were talking, it almost sounded like Harley was going to confess because she says, you got to learn to laugh it off. And she's like, is that your professional opinion?
It's
And
good.
she's like, and she's about to say something when Renee walks in. And
Mhm.
I wonder if she was going to confess or,
That's a good point.
because the
Especially
only
on the end.
thing, because I thought, throughout that Harley was such a great friend to um, Barbara. But
Mhm.
then I thought, okay, well, she does lie to her,
Right.
and or was she going to tell her the truth and just didn't get a chance to?
Good
Hmm.
question. Good question.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good, again, maybe something we can see in a sequel episode somewhere down the line where all of these kind of complicated relationship questions could be answered. But speaking of Harley, we do have Jamie Chung returning in this episode here as Dr. Harleen Quinzel / Harley Quinn, and we've already kind of talked about it from a physical standpoint. But yeah, just the bubbly, confident, like whip smart nature of the Dr. Quinzel version of her to the cold, calculating Harley Quinn. Like like almost for a minute, I was like, "Is this the same actor?" Like I had a moment with Miss Chung's performance here, where I was like, it's such a stark difference, and it feels like she just pulled kind of like Michael Ansara did as Mr. Freeze in the original series, like where it just feels like somehow she just like drained all of the color from her face and all of the
Mm.
emotion from her voice and just flips that switch, and I just think she's incredible in this episode.
Yeah, I think she's great too. I think that was one of the first things that you notice is, and it's played up so well because as we've already said, like this bubbly personality. She's almost talking like a mile a minute when she's, in her Dr. Harleen persona, and she's bubbly and she's, you cannot not notice her. She's the star of the conversation. Like
Hmm.
all the attention draws to her and how she emotes, and she's so over the top. And then when in that scene where she decides to flip the switch and she's capturing her next victim, you see that visually they match it up really nice because her face changes with it, but her voice drops. I feel like an octave, a total octave. Like she goes, it's just completely emotionless in how she's talking and the way that she communicates, and her voice drops. And it's like, oh shoot, like this is about to go down. Like she is not playing, and it's great because that's exactly when she gets Batman captured also, like in that brief dialogue that she has with him. It's the same delivery there. So here's this guy who everyone is terrified of. You see at the beginning that beginning sequence, the criminal's trying to like bargain with him to give him part of his loot. Like everybody's terrified of this guy, and she has him, and she's not afraid of him. She's like, oh, okay. Good luck escaping. Like I
Right.
didn't want to have to kill you, but here I am. Here you
Mhm.
are. We'll work on that childhood trauma next time. Like,
You mentioned, yeah.
So it's really good. The fact that she kind of has that difference there, it makes it believable that this character is who she is. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, yeah, and I think we always talk about that again, the idea of a dual identity. Like, could people be convinced that like Clark Kent and Superman aren't the same person,
Right.
or Batman and Bruce Wayne aren't the same person? Same thing here. Of like, again, we've talked about of her being like a reflection of Batman in that way as well. And then speaking of which, we have Hamish Linklater as Batman slash Bruce Wayne in this episode. I don't actually think we see Bruce Wayne. I think he's just Batman the whole time in this one,
Uh-huh.
which is another, I feel like, a market.
Oh no, when he's in the office.
Oh,
When
that's
he's,
right.
Is that the episode before? I'm thinking of.
I'll say when he goes to visit her, I think that's in the episode before.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So he's aware, yeah, because he's already aware of her. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
well, and again, since you've only been on here for this episode, you feel free to talk about his role over the course of the whole series. But we've already kind of touched on it, Monica, is that this is a Batman that is on a journey. He's so closed off and like emotionally damaged when we first meet him. And then, like we say, he's like taking the little baby steps out into being like a real person again in this episode, I feel like especially.
Yeah. In terms of Hamish Linklater's performance, yeah, throughout. I think that I like that it develops and it's like he comes into the character as I'm not sure what was going on. I mean, if he was channeling Kevin Conroy or was
Mhm.
he, trying to do his own thing.
Mhm.
So I think that it probably over the series he develops his own
Yeah.
voice,
Mm-hmm.
and I like that.
I
'Cause,
think it's
yeah,
interesting. He did say, I did hear an interview with him where he said he wasn't intentionally, like consciously channeling Kevin, but then when he went back and listened to himself, he was like, I think I was subconsciously channeling Kevin Conroy, whether I meant to or not in the way, because there are some things that I feel like in the way that he uses his inflection, especially when he's as Batman, it does sound like he is attempting to at least homage the great Kevin Conroy, but it is very much it. I mean, to me, the only thing that I can pull out of it, Monica, maybe you feel the same, is that he does come across as emotionless. Like it is very even. He doesn't show a whole lot of up or down like reaction to anything that's going on. Whether there's a gun pointed in his face, the police are out there, interrupting his investigation. The only time that we really get it is when he kind of has that little interaction with Barbara at the end is the only time that he really shows a slight variance. And it's not even that much. It's
yeah,
like very little.
yeah. I mean, when I first heard it, I was like, okay, because I think we're all expecting,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Of course.
the goat,
Yeah,
Yeah.
of
I think
course.
so. When I first heard him, I thought it sounded like, because I didn't know who the actor was. I
Mhm.
thought that it was the actor who played Archer.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
I can hear that. Yeah.
I think that's all I kept visualizing is I kept visualizing
That's
Archer,
funny.
but I think as it goes on, and he's in Bob's Burgers.
I was gonna say
yeah.
that's where my
John
head
Benjamin,
went.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's who I thought it was. But it's as it develops, I think I got used to his voice, and I think that possibly it's as it's developing, it's I can see him as Batman. It's
Yeah.
and I do like his Bruce Wayne.
Mhm.
Yeah. Agreed.
I think that works really well.
As far as this week goes, Liam, I think basically on the back of Miss Chung's performance, I thought she did a lot of the carrying as far as that and obviously our back row as well. Yeah, I ended up giving with an 8 out of 10 for my score for voice based on theirs. I mean, everybody else does a fine job, but I think they are the standouts for this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I went just 1 point higher, which I think is the theme of this episode. I think I liked it just slightly more than you guys,
Uh-huh.
but I gave it a 9 out of 10 for my voice score. I just think, yeah, Jamie Chung as Harleen slash Harley, I just think is just real, like I said, really like gripped me this time around when I rewatched it. Like I said, maybe having not having been around it so much and just getting to come back to this episode as like a standalone piece as well, also I think helped me like appreciate
Sure.
her performance and combined with what we just talked about with, Hamish's Batman kind of taking his first steps into being a, more of a emotionally evolved person, I think helps too.
Absolutely. Monica, what about you?
I gave it a 9,
All
and that's
right.
mainly because of Jamie Chung's performance. That was really
Yeah.
brilliant. And I do like, I know he had a small part, but Alfred I think is brilliant.
He's good for the
And
show, right? He
yeah,
he does a lot of the emoting when Batman doesn't. Like he's the
yeah,
emotion in those sequences.
yeah. And Crystal Joy Brown, brilliant. And
Mhm.
Commissioner Gordon, Eric Morgan Stewart. And
Oh.
I do like all the millionaires or billionaires, whatever
Yeah.
they are. I think they're all perfect. Yeah.
Alrighty. So we have some final scores here. So totaling everything up here, I ended up at a 30 out of 40. Liam, you're at a 33 out of 40. Monica, you take home the high score for
Wow.
this week. You're 34
I
out
was
of
wrong.
40. So
I really like this episode.
there
I
we
do too.
go. And we talk about it a lot. Sometimes our scores like don't necessarily we will get the enjoyment out of it, and we're kind of you know what, regardless of our score reflected it or not, we still like this episode. So
Hmm.
I think one of the things that we talk about on the show sometimes, Monica, and it's hard because these aren't in the same rotation. Maybe for you, because obviously you said you've watched this a lot. So it sounds like maybe you would give this, we call it rewatchability. So is this one, if somebody's coming to you and saying, you know what, what's one episode of this series that I should watch? Or if you're just like, you know what, I want to watch an episode of Batman Caped Crusader, I'm gonna pop in this one. Is this you are you given a recommendation for this episode?
I do. I mean, I like them all for different
Of
reasons. I
course.
do
Yeah.
like the Nocturna one,
Hmm.
and although I wish she was a vampire.
Right. They cheap out.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I do like the Clayface one, but I like the story of that one. I think
Mhm.
visually it could use a little more,
Sure.
but I think the story is brilliant.
Agreed.
So yeah, I would give this one a watch if
Okay.
as one of the better shows.
There we
Hmm.
go. Liam, what about you?
Yeah, I think this is, I mean, one, just because it's continuing plot threads,
Yep.
obviously, for the series, like,
It's hard not to
and
recommend
right,
it.
and it's like arguably other than maybe the Penguin, as far as like these season one episodes, Harley Quinn's like the most iconic villain in this first season, I think. I mean, we get the Joker for a second at the end, and we get Two-Face and some other Catwoman. Like there's other big ones here, but again, maybe it's just like the recency of how much that character has exploded into her own live action and animation and comic books and everything on her own. But it feels like she's just as big of a heavy hitter as a Harvey Dent or a Catwoman. So I feel like she's like if you're trying to introduce someone to the show just to like get the general vibe of, and especially if you're trying to show how it's different than the old animated series. I feel like this is maybe on the short list for ones I'd recommend for sure.
Awesome. All right, Monica. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a pleasure. We love having you on here.
Yes.
Hopefully, it'll be less time next time. The next time we have you on, it won't take as long.
Schedules permitting.
Yeah,
'Cause
schedules
we know
permitting.
you're one of the busiest women in comics
Right,
currently.
absolutely. Speaking of, can you tell us a little bit and the listeners a little bit about what you've got going on right now? Because as I sort of alluded to, you've been nominated for a Ringo for your most recent project that you're working on, and you're working on some classic stuff that you've been involved in for a couple years now. You're going back to the well, so to speak, on a fun project. So, what can the listeners look forward to as far as Monica Kubina projects?
So I'm currently working on Nothing But Nightwing.
But with two T's, right?
Yes,
That's nothing
two T's.
but Nightwing.
finally going to put it out there.
That's right.
And that's Webtoons.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be found on DCUI. And also, I am working on DC Superhero Girls, the graphic novel, and that will be out next year.
Awesome.
I believe in June.
Fantastic.
Which, as you mentioned before we went on the air, that's kind of like a homecoming for you, as and they got the band back together, so to speak, to work on that, right?
Yes. It's fun to work with my my old friends. Yeah.
That's
great.
awesome. We love that. Well, again, make sure you guys are checking out Nothing But Nightwing. I feel like DC's Instagram posts stuff about it weekly, which means to me it's super popular. As I mentioned already, nominated for a Ringo, so hopefully, crossing our fingers, you get the award there. You guys are doing some great work, and hopefully people continue reading that and enjoy it. And if you haven't checked it out, no time like the present.
It's free.
It's free, yeah.
Yes.
Can't beat free, especially if you're looking for a good comic book.
Yeah. On a nerdy note, I was really excited that you got to draw Jason, or got to color Jason and Tim, that's Red Hood and Robin in one of the recent ones, along with the Flash, like Wally West, the Flash in there too. It's like, I was like, that's just fun. Like, and I think it shows in your work in this series how much fun you guys are having making it.
Yeah. We have a lot of fun. It was really great getting all those guys together. Seeing them all together, yeah.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Awesome. Well, you can follow Monica on Instagram at monica.kubina. She posts her stuff on there pretty frequently on what she's working on, or posts the Nothing But Nightwing stuff in her story. So check that out. Best friend of the show, Monica Kubina, thank you so much once again for joining us.
Reigning, defending best friend of the show.
That's right. We're so happy to have you back on, and we can't wait to have you on again soon.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for joining us, Monica. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you to Monica Kubina for joining us once again. Best friend of the show, as we said, a title she will never lose. So happy for all of Monica's success that we've talked about. Again, make sure you're checking out Nothing But Nightwing and all of Monica's other work on her social media and the various platforms there. And if you want to look up us on the social medias and help support us, you can do so at DCAU Review on Twitter/X, as well as Instagram, and also those other supplementary social media sites. And as far as direct monetary ways to support us, we've got a couple. Of course, there's our store. There's a link in our show notes where you can pick yourself up a sticker or a hat or a shirt or something. And of course, as Cal already mentioned at the top of the show, you can head to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU Review. And if you're a monthly subscriber, you can even ask us a question, as mentioned. Thank you. And we thank everybody who does support us, whether it's through buymeacoffee.com or one of those other places we mentioned. We always appreciate the support. And Cal, as we look forward to next week's episode, we're continuing on in release order of this first season of Batman Caped Crusader. So let's tell the folks about what we'll be reviewing next week.
That's right, Liam. We will be looking at the next episode, believe it or not. And as we said, it is the month of Spooky Scary. And what in the world is more scary than a ghost? Specifically, a man that rides a horse and is a living, breathing, well, maybe not breathing, but a living ghost. We'll be talking about next week's episode, which features the Gentleman Ghost and is titled Night Ride. So looking forward to talking about that one. It is a unique and certainly more supernatural sci-fi twinge to it. So we'll be looking at that one on next week's episode.
Absolutely. Can't wait to get into that spooky side as we continue on in October, all month long, with these Caped Crusader reviews. Can't wait. But until then, I'm Liam.
And I'm Cal.
We'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Adios.